Welcome back. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. And we begin with some highly inflammatory statements made by Donald Trump during an event in Miami. Overnight, Donald Trump claimed that it is impossible for the Ukrainian president to have high approval ratings and called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator without elections. Moreover, Trump said that Russia holds the cards when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine.
He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast. He's very upset that he wasn't invited. He could have come if he wanted to, but that he wasn't invited to Saudi Arabia. But he's been working for 3 years. There's never been even meetings or phone calls to stop this war.
I think the Russians want to see the war end, and I really do. But I think they have the cards a little bit because, you know, they've taken a lot of territory, so they have the cards.
We are now going live to our correspondent Oz Kataji in Kyiv following Donald Trump's comments on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Hi, Oz. So tell us where Trump's words received in Ukraine. How were they received? And is Zelensky actually perceived negatively, or did these words have the opposite effect?
Well, they've been received pretty poorly here in Ukraine. That seems to be the general consensus speaking to the public this morning. There hasn't been an official line out of Kyiv yet, but they have been busy here. President Zelensky, behind me, the commemorations for the Heavenly Hundred heroes has begun. That's when civilian protesters were shot dead by government forces in 2014 here in Maidan Square, protesting for greater cooperation with the European Union. President Zelensky placed some candles at the memorial, and behind me, people have started congregating for the memorial service. Now, U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is also in Ukraine at the moment. He's in Kyiv for discussions with President Zelensky. So this comes amidst those really inflammatory and false remarks from Donald Trump about President Zelensky personally. So while these comments would have gone down badly here with Ukrainians, President Zelensky obviously has a tightrope to walk while trying to maintain support from the United States with an administration that is growing increasingly hostile to him personally. So a really difficult and very busy day for the Ukrainians, and presumably there's going to be more to come out of this meeting between Zelensky and Kellogg, and we'll be bringing you more of that right here on TVP World, so stay tuned. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So please keep us updated. That was Oz Kataji reporting live from Kyiv. Overnight, Russian forces once again launched a drone attack on the South Ukrainian city of Odessa, targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure. As per the city's mayor, the strike wounded one person and caused significant damage to local infrastructure.
The strike marks the second consecutive night of drone attacks for the residents of Odessa. In the aftermath, fire broke out on the roof of a warehouse building and a 55-year-old woman was wounded, requiring hospitalization. The attack also left some 5,000 people in just one of Odessa's districts without power. Overall, the 2 days of strikes resulted in nearly 90,000 households losing electricity. Meanwhile, Russian drones attacked Kyiv. Local authorities of the Ukrainian capital reported that a downed Russian drone crashed in the city. So far, no damage or casualties have been reported.
On Wednesday night, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said a forced capitulation of Ukraine would mean a capitulation of the entire West. Posted on social media, Tusk's comment came after the American president echoed Russian propaganda, calling his Ukrainian counterpart a dictator.
A forced capitulation of Ukraine would mean a capitulation of the whole community of the West, with all the consequences of this fact, and let no one pretend that they don't see this.
French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer are expected to travel to Washington, D.C. early next week, according to U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
This visit comes as relations between Europe and Washington are tense over negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. Earlier this week, representatives of Washington and Moscow agreed to begin talks on ending Russia's war in Ukraine. European and Ukrainian delegations were not invited to sit at the negotiating table. Following these talks, Emmanuel Macron held 2 emergency summits on Ukraine with European and NATO representatives. Out of European leaders, only UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has recently stated that he would consider deploying British troops to Ukraine.
British Defense Secretary John Healey met his Norwegian counterpart near the country's border with Russia. While in Kirkenes, Healey said Europe must bring Ukraine to the strongest possible position for peace talks and put maximum pressure on Vladimir Putin. Speaking from what Healey called NATO's front line, the British official warned that the administration in Moscow is a threat well beyond Ukraine. Healey's visit came a day after Russia and the United States held the first round of talks on how to end the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian and European governments were not invited to the Saudi capital, furthering concerns that Russia and the U.S. might cut a deal that ignores European interests.
Our concern as defence ministers is that we're not jeopardising the peace by forgetting about the war. And our job as defence ministers is to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position going into any talks. And that means continuing to step up the military aid that we in Europe, alongside we argue to the States, needs to be maintained. Because the maximum pressure on Putin is going to mean the maximum chance that he will negotiate seriously.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is on his way to Slovakia. The visit comes amid changes in the Slovakian political landscape.
On Wednesday, 3 parties of Slovakia's ruling coalition agreed to reshuffle the government in a move boosting the strength of Prime Minister Robert Fico's Populist Party. Since the end of 2024, Slovakia has been seeing anti-government protests, primarily opposing Robert Fico's pro-Russian policies. While in the country, Rutte will meet with the President of Slovakia, Petr Pellegrini, and the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Robert Kaliňák. Rutte and Pellegrini will hold a joint press conference following their meeting. During the visit, the Secretary General will not meet with Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico. Rutte will also address the troops of NATO's forward land forces stationed in Lešť.
In the Czech Republic, 2 people were killed in a knife attack at a shopping mall on Thursday morning. Local media reports the suspect is a 16-year-old Czech citizen who was arrested by police shortly after the stabbings. The attacks happened in the city of Hradec Králové, around 100 kilometers east of Prague. Police said the motive for the knife assaults is not yet known. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the leader of the CDU Friedrich Merz took part in their final debate before the snap elections set to be held in Germany on Sunday. Surprisingly, the 2 frontrunners for the Chancellor's office shared some common ground on migration policy.
We have to solve 2 major problems in this country in the next 4 years. That is migration and the economy. And if we don't solve these 2 problems, then you and we and all democratic parties in the political centre will not be facing the next change of government in the 2029 federal elections, as we will finally slide into right-wing populism. And I'm standing here to avoid exactly that. And that's why the answer is very clear. I will only sign a coalition agreement that includes a turnaround on migration and a turnaround on the economy. Perpetrators must be severely punished, and if they have committed such offences and do not have German citizenship, then they must certainly expect that we will return them to another country, return them to their country of origin, and that we will use all measures and pull out all the stops to make this possible.
The remains of 4 hostages held by Hamas, one of them a dual Polish-Israeli citizen, have been returned to Israel. The bodies were transported to Khan Yunis, where they were placed in Red Cross vehicles. The organization will bring the bodies to Israel troops stationed in Gaza for a short religious ceremony. The 4 bodies include a mother and 2 children whose fate had been unknown since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023. The 4th body is that of an 84-year-old veteran peace activist, Oded Lifshitz, who held both Polish and Israeli citizenship. It marks the first time Hamas has handed over dead hostages since the ceasefire began last month. The return sparked comments from Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli prime minister said that the heart of the Israel nation is torn and added that the country is dealing with monsters. After the short ceremony with Israeli soldiers in Gaza, the 4 coffins will travel to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute for identification. The process, according to Israeli authorities, could take up to 48 hours to complete. And with that, we end our news service for now, but please do stay tuned back on TVP World in just a moment with more features and interviews.